Did you yourself see where Twilight was going in terms of what it would do for you?
No, I still don't really know what it's done for me, to be honest. I got a little bit detached as it started really exploding. When I had people waiting outside my house, I was losing my mind.
The dissolution of their relationship continues to make headlines.
As more moving trucks were spotted Saturday outside the home the two share.
What is that feeling like at that moment? You're sitting in your own home.
Yeah, you're in prison. I like my prison to be the one that I've decorated.
You're a star in one of the most successful film franchises of all time, paid millions of dollars for a performance that thankfully didn't demand much.
I was just no good at auditioning ever because I can't cry on cue.
Even better is the crowd of loyal, adoring fans, and a constant stream of attention.
You can't possibly ever get used to that screaming.
It's clear that you're here to stay. The media knows it, your bank account knows it, and so does the rest of Hollywood. There's just one glaring problem. You can't stand any of it.
Let me use that for a second. You've got a million pictures. You have 5 cars walking around. Why are you trying to hide behind it? Just speak to me in my face.
See, fame is often a double-edged sword, one that, if you aren't prepared, could wreak havoc on your personal life.
Because for one thing, you get all paranoid about everything and you have no idea why people like you or whatever.
You can't be emotional at all.
Your fans, while at times supportive, can also be incredibly invasive.
5 cars of people outside your house, and they're literally 24 hours a day. All you want to do is punch them in the face, and that's what they want.
What good is the money if you can barely use it?
I don't go out anywhere where I can get photographed anymore.
But yet, none of this seems significant when it feels like the entire world is laughing at you.
I'm Robert Pattinson.
There's this actress, Kristen Stewart. She had a boyfriend, right? And she cheated on him.
So here's the thing, Robert Pattinson isn't really all that well equipped for the limelight.
This is not what I want at all. It's like, you get all the crazies, you can't do anything.
He's a guy who seems awfully timid, conversationally awkward, and at times painfully honest.
There's a lot of stuff in the Twilight world that doesn't make any sense. It's like, why are they still going to high school? Like, up until last year, they're 100 years old.
Because I thought I was pretty safe. And they flew up and they're like, yeah, you have to do the opposite of what you're doing now or you're going to get fired today.
Growing up with 2 older sisters and within a creatively inclined family, he would sooner learn an instrument than play a sport.
Rob's always been a bit shy about his talent for singing.
I do a bit. I just don't really release it. I'm too scared.
In time, his love of music would take a backseat to film. When your acting heroes include the likes of Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson, it makes a lot more sense. He was inspired by the greats. However, when you're just a 19-year-old kid with a few theater credits, your choices are limited.
I was auditioning for everything. It's just like you're doing the jobs you get.
There's a reason the average age for an Oscar winner is 50. Even if you're naturally gifted, the more emotionally fulfilling roles are often entrusted to those with far more credits. Not only that, but at the time, teenage films and series had much more surface level themes and a lower standard of performance. Any deeper and it would lose its commercial appeal. That's not to say your breakout role couldn't have been a bit of both.
You know the prefect's bathroom on the 5th floor? It's not a bad place for a bath.
Pattinson's role in the Harry Potter franchise would cement his status as both a heartthrob and a potential breakout star.
It was a big deal at the time. It felt like very, very intimidating.
But even though this was a commercially successful franchise, it wasn't exactly an Oscar contender, at least regarding the performances.
I had no concept of how to kind of get into a psyched up physical state.
But whatever traction he initially had,
I ran out of money, basically. It was definitely going the wrong direction in terms of a career.
Would pale in comparison to his next massive role.
No one had any idea that this would happen.
I don't think anyone did. I don't even think the people who own the rights to the books knew that it would happen. We've done 5 or 6 countries in a week.
Twilight was not just sweeping the nation, but the entire world.
Thousands of teenagers from all over the world waited hours in the cold to catch a glimpse of their new heroes.
Aside from the astronomical box office numbers, there were countless websites, forums, merchandise, parodies, and an ungodly large fan base.
Screams could be heard across London's Leicester Square.
I mean, this guy was at the peak of mainstream success. Then in 2009, which is of course none of our business, he begins dating the lead.
There was immediate chemistry between the two of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
further indulging an already rabid fan base. Now, I'm not saying he should cater his personal life to accommodate the masses, but if fans weren't already basking in the fantasized perception of both the actors and the series, they were now losing their minds.
During a cross-country tour, almost 6,000 people, mostly teens, jammed at Dallas Mall to get a glimpse of Edward.
He was essentially everywhere, but with enough major success comes an abundance of criticism.
They get so addicted to kind of just wanting to cause hurt and pain on someone, and it's sort of, I don't know how to, I mean, it's a faceless enemy.
You've got a man who, at the peak of mainstream relevancy, is bombarded with ridicule. Every aspect of his life is put under a microscopic lens that the vast majority of industry careers would never experience a fraction of.
It's stalkers with cameras, you know, they're saying, oh, I'm not a stalker, I'm a paparazzi. It's like, oh, that makes a massive difference.
A life so overwhelmed by parasocial relationships.
Everybody just wants to know, how are you doing? And what do you want your fans to know about what's going on in your personal life?
I mean,
that he could barely find comfort in leaving his own home.
And you're so helpless to it as well. And I think also just being like a guy, like it's just so emasculating.
This level of fame would cause anyone tremendous resentment for their career decisions. Even when attempting to find other work, it's in a similar genre.
If you have a recognizable face, then people won't believe you in certain characters.
You're now a typecast. One with millions of dollars, sure, but what good is the excess if it came at the expense of creative fulfillment and nearly all of your privacy?
Robert Pattinson became a huge star in the Twilight vampire films in return for the kind of attention and intrusion that it seemed would never die.
It just takes time to realize how to live when your life kind of seismically shifts. The thing is, I don't really do anything in my life at all.
This would surely cripple any interest you had in living a healthy, productive life. And for a time, it would.
If you've had a moment of just sort of raging at a closed door, when the door opens, like, you're inevitably gonna confront a cold gust of emptiness.
Robert Pattinson, true to his nature, kept silent during this period of turmoil and mental instability. What good would it do to lash out? It would just prove that they have his attention.
Trying to attack like a reflection in the water or something, you're just like punching, you just look crazy.
He didn't have a choice. He simply had to stomach the price of fame and for a while, ignore a world that constantly demanded a resurgence. In time, they'd find it. But it wouldn't come as expected.
Most likely your fans won't be watching this kind of movie. Are you concerned about that?
You've got to do stuff for yourself. If you're trying to do it for other people, then if it goes wrong, you'll regret every second of it.
After a 2-year hiatus, he'd make his return with the help of what was, at the time, a new and still relatively unknown production company. A24's The Rover brought something different.
You do kind of ambitious, challenging things, and hopefully at least one other person in the world will like it.
There was no romance or love interest here, just a gritty dystopian nightmare.
Why are you telling me this? I just remembered it. Not everything has to be about something.
One whose darker themes would give Pattinson both the challenge he'd been craving and the critical praise.
But I think this movie is worth watching purely for Guy Pearce's performance, for one of Robert Pattinson's best, if not his best so far.
There was just one problem. Nobody saw it. So was the case for his follow-up project, and the next one, and the next one. Financially, it didn't really matter. He was sitting on a mountain of wealth with enough runway to last him decades. But what good would these performances do for his image if they weren't acknowledged?
So Rob, do you listen to critical reviews at all? Do you read them?
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone does. All these actors who say, oh, I don't watch my stuff, they're just lying.
Yet, through a stroke of luck and a little persistence,
I saw this still from the previous movie on the banner of a website and then kind of sent this sort of crazy, obsessive email saying, I know this is supposed to happen, it's meant to be. We sort of agreed to do a movie which didn't exist.
He'd find exactly what he was looking for.
I'd played a lot of parts which were quite reactive and quite passive. I just wanted to play a part which was really on the front foot and also didn't have any shame and any fear.
The Safdie brothers are known for their gritty and fast-paced style, and by this point had made Pattinson a priority. To say he delivered would be a massive understatement.
You don't know the first thing about me, bro.
What's the no? What's the no? You serve absolutely no function whatsoever.
Aside from landing the New York accent, he'd captured the manic, high intensity of a strung out and manipulative fugitive.
How would you like it if I made you cry, huh? Would you like that?
It's for my brother, and you're gonna get back the same day, right? Right?
Yeah, she'll get it back.
You'll get it back.
This time, not only was it a hit with the critics, but the public as well, even landing a 6-minute standing ovation at the Cannes Film Festival. The icing on the cake was that it was backed by a production company with a trajectory towards the stars. A24 would provide Pattinson the blueprint to becoming an indie darling. It took nearly a decade to break the mold of a romance typecast, and behind the scenes, another monster performance was brewing.
I always try and pick a job which you think at first glance, like, I can't do this, I don't have the skill set to do it.
One that would test his limits alongside one of the greatest living actors working today.
There's like a playfulness and like a naughtiness to all of his parts, even when he's playing something really dark.
Pattinson's performance in The Lighthouse rivaled that of Defoe's, a seasoned veteran whose talent was really never up for question.
Bad luck to kill a seabird.
More tall tales.
Bad luck to kill a seabird.
It was like peering into the mind of a madman. Whatever doubters were left after the performance in Good Time would be silenced with the release of The Lighthouse. But how would he fare with the mainstream? These were still considered indie projects, and despite the success, he'd avoided large box office draws for a reason. Only a few years prior, it left him nearly ruined.
I think at the time there was a moment, probably when I was about 25, 26, that it kind of got a lot.
And by now, he was still drawing questions about the franchise he so desperately wanted to deviate from.
It's been 10 years since Twilight. What's one of your biggest fondest memories from that?
I mean, I still wasn't entirely sure that I was going to be an actor until after that movie, so.
If he would, it would have to be somewhat of a guarantee. A director whose vision alone could draw charitable interpretations from even the most skeptical of critics, with a cast of equally talented actors. Christopher Nolan would pair Pattinson alongside John David Washington, and despite not really knowing the premise,
they're really, really big concepts, but it's kind of like a big, massive adventure action movie, and you don't really need to know what's happening like that much.
It seemed like he thoroughly enjoyed the process. I mean, compare the Twilight interviews with those of films like Tenet and Good Time, and you notice a shift in his interest. He seems far more engaged and much less of a cynic. The mockery that came with his previous pretty boy typecast was now a thing of the past, so surely at this point he'd avoid any franchise, especially those with incredibly loyal fans.
This is the first time we've got a non-friends and family audience seeing it.
Who have some pretty high standards and don't shy away from dishing out harsh criticism.
Were you nervous going in?
I was absolutely terrified. I haven't been this scared to release a movie in such a long time.
Ironically, it was his choice of obscure indie projects that would land him the role of mainstream superhero.
It's a tragedy. That's one of the reasons it feels kind of different. There's ways to reinterpret that character in an infinite number of ways.
Although different from his previous choice of roles, it was actually one he'd considered for a while.
And even my agent was like, really? Because I normally, it's not really...
You wanted to do Batman, so you sought out the part.
Mm-hmm.
Look further, and it even seemed like the perfect fit. Pattinson's reclusive nature was ideal for this portrayal of a more withdrawn Bruce Wayne.
If I can't change things here, if I can't have an effect, I don't care what happens to me.
One whose sole purpose was vengeance, who drew far more distrust from those in positions of authority, where his prior quiet and restrained mainstream performance would draw massive criticism, this one would draw a wave of praise.
I'm gonna begin by saying you are an excellent Batman. I know you were worried.
And despite a cast of wildly successful actors, it was Pattinson who stole the show.
I'm vengeance.
It felt like with this run of new films, any ridicule or mockery was just the product of bad faith. Yet, despite the waves of unanimous praise, critical and commercial success, it wasn't enough to calm the unease that had seemed to always be present.
Everything comes in like ebbs and flows, and also like I think when you're older, everyone only cares about young people nowadays, young people with Instagrams.
I don't think any amount of success or fame can suppress human nature. He still, I'm sure, has trouble dealing with it, but this turmoil and stress becomes a lot easier to tolerate with the comfort of a restored legacy. He went from being the butt of every Twilight joke to being one of the most in-demand actors working today.
I feel like so lucky, like the entire entire time. I've had like a really, really fun life.
With both the respect of the critics and the general public. This turmoil, while I'm sure traumatic, gave him the runway necessary for a proper resurgence, achieving heights before the age of 40 that most seasoned actors only dream of. Despite the ridicule and despite the anxiety, he's exactly the artist he's always aspired to be.
I'm more interested in getting one person to really, really, really like it and to be their favorite movie, rather than get loads of people to just be like, oh, let's go and see that. Like, it's kind of...
Right.